Billy Harvey.
Hey there, this is Rob Ruckus.
Hey, it's Tony from Fastball.
Hey, it's Ben McKelvey.
Hey guys, it's Matt here from the White Lakes.
What's up everybody, Jacob from The Big News.
Hey guys, it's Nick Collins here from The Effect and Better Strangers.
Check me out at Almost Famous Magazine.
Buzzing from our clips to be dropping on Almost Famous Magazine.
Check out Almost Famous Magazine.
You can find more clips from my interview with Almost Famous Magazine.
3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Almost Famous Conversations. And we got one for you today, coming to you from Cardiff, Wales. And we'll talk about why he's there pretty soon. This gentleman with me is Tim, and in the words of Mike Rutherford, the Power Howar, coming to you live from Wales. How you doing, Timmy?
I'm very good, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing good. You're in Wales, and you were mentioning earlier before we started that it's a bright sunny day. Meanwhile, I'm in Texas, and I think it's about 92. So we've got more than enough sun. I'll send some extra your way.
Yeah,
for
please.
Sure.
Well, you know what? They had a lot here, and it was just, when you come to Wales, it's the idea or it's this romantic kind of rustic, hilly mountains and, but not in sun. But today, when the sun shines in Wales, it's a really, really hard country to not love. It just is spectacular. It just everything looks gorgeous. And of course you've got the water as you go out to if you keep paddling, you'll probably get to Ireland, the south of Ireland. So, which is kind of nice. Or if you go the wrong way, you'll be in Maine. That's really wrong.
That takes a lot of arm strength to get to Maine.
That's like elvish, swimming.
That's some serious rowing,
right?
Hey, I know you well. I know people in the UK know you well. I want the rest of the world to get to know you. And many people don't know that you are a national treasure of Canada.
Well, I still keep waiting for you gotta call me. The thing is, what's funny about Canada is I love my country. And I do. I think it's great. It was wonderful to be born there because I was born really far north. I wasn't really born in any place that people would pick up on. And I quite like that. People got out to the wilderness, and then they made a life there. So, and I just happened to, we lost our farm and then moved to Edmonton and blah, blah, blah. And the rest is kind of history. But, I do love it. But it's funny, you being in America, I probably get hired more for American stuff than I do for Canadian stuff. And oddly enough, I felt like I never really fit because people didn't know what to do with somebody who wanted to do everything, wanted to dance, wanted to sing, wanted to do rock, wanted to act. There wasn't any place except for New York. And when I finally went to New York, they're like, oh, great. You're home. And that because I felt like home for the first time because everybody kind of went, oh yeah, you can do TV, oh you can do movies, and you can do a play, and you can do acting, you can dance if you want to, there was none of this, if you want to write songs and be a rocker, you can do that. There was no, it kind of was open because that was a big enough place where some people did that. Whereas in Canada, they're like, what do you do? Are you an actor? Or will you sing? Oh, you must be a singer. Oh, you dance. So you got to be a dancer. Well, you must be musical theater. Oh, no, you just do plays? No, you can't do that. Only actors do plays. And only musical theater do musical theater plays. And only dancers do and then, you can't be in a rock band. And then so I kind of jazz, what sing jazz, country western. So the one place that kind of took it all on, where you all became acceptable was New York. And then and after New York, I would say going to New York, that kind of got the fires in my belly going that I thought I could keep going with whatever I wanted to do. And if I kept doing it long enough, I knew there were some New Yorkers who might go, yeah, he's shit, but he deserves to be here. Yeah, you know what I mean? We don't like that guy, but we do like that guy,
Well, you got to earn your stripes one way or another, right? You got to.
No, man, you have to.
Going back to living kind of in the middle of nowhere in Canada, probably a very safe place, knowing Canada. You're out in the middle of nowhere. What was that spark when you were young? What age were you when you first kind of got that that urge to gravitate toward music, dance, and theater? What brought that to your life?
Oh man, like, well, I think the thing is, I come from a musical family, and I say that in a weird way because my family's all into different types of music. Like my eldest brother Peter, he was into like Al Jolson and the Rat Pack and like Sammy Davis Jr. and like those guys, Mel Torme, but mostly the Rat Pack. And because he listened to that got me into other stuff like Nat King Cole and Tony Bennett and things. But so I got that from him. Then my brother Jess, who's the second son in my family, he was into country western music, so he was into traditional country western. So, and of course, coming from Alberta, which is the Texas of Canada, there's two types of music, country and western, and it was everywhere. So that was always a backdrop. But my brother was a cool side of it. So he was, he got me to Merle Haggard and Lefty Frizzell and the Carter Family and Willie Nelson and all the heavies, and into bluegrass and things like that. So I got that from him. Then there's my sister Prairie, and she was like an Anglophile, and so she had this huge record collection when she was like from the age of 14 to the age of like 7, maybe 20. She collected tons of records, and I'm talking 300, 400 records, and they were all like The Who, Kinks, Stone, The Who, the Kinks, Rolling Stones. You had the Beatles, all the Beatles, Moody Blues, T-Rex, David Bowie, Led Zeppelin, you name it. Like it was in there. And in fact, even I think there's Pink Floyd in there, but there was a couple American ones like Steve Miller. There was like, like there's a couple of things that snuck in there, but there's, like Deep Purple. There was, Iron Butterfly. There's a lot of cool stuff. King Crimson, and so I was 7 when I inherited that record collection because she thought she was too mature to have it. Just had a kid, so she said, "Timmy, you can have my record collection." I picked it up, and I was like, I begged my mom for a turntable, and I got like a Radio Shack, like plastic thing, and it was not fit to play any of these records, but it stretched just to the edge of that. So I started listening to those albums, and I was just, as a 7-year-old, you're not really like, I was like, my favorite albums at that time were like White Album, and I used to love Help, and I used to love, Stones Painted Black, and I used to love Moody Blues, and so I'd put on, whatever I liked as a 7-year-old, Rocky Raccoon and, or the Who's Next, like there's some cool stuff going on there, but I wasn't able to get into the deeper stuff until a bit later on. And then once I went back to that, I would go back to it all the time and go, what the hell is this album? And I'd listen to like Led Zeppelin. I go, holy, my God, what was that? Or T-Rex. And I'd be like, this is, phenomenal. Or Bowie, and but then also I grew up in the 80s. So, I had all these other bands like so then I'm going to my ex-brother. So Prairie gave me the English stuff. And then my brother Donovan gave me all the electronic music, like Jean-Michel Jarre, Kraftwerk, he was into these, Vangelis and, that stuff. And the synth stuff, but not really the poppy synth stuff, but the creation of synth music. I think this poppy was the poppiest it got was like, who's the guy? Cars. Here in my car, I go.
Oh, Gary Newman.
Gary Newman. That was as poppy as it kind of got. The rest was like ambient, almost the beginnings of trance without the beat. And so I loved listening to that stuff to kind of escape, And then mine era, I was into Kate Bush, Peter Gabriel, stuff I would listen to that over and over again, and just I loved it. And then Shock the Monkey and these things, and I didn't really put 2 and 2 together that he was part of Genesis at the time. I knew Peter as Peter because he'd just broken away, and there was a big enough divide that he never mentioned it, and you'd have to know Genesis to kind of get that. And then, but all that stuff kind of bled into me. I got into the Smiths and New Order, and I got into like, kind of the alternative British side of music, plus punk rock, the Clash, and and certainly the American stuff, Dead Kennedy, 7 Seconds, the Germs and bands like that were seminal to me because I love that as a youth. When you're like 13, 14, you start to break away. You're like, I want something to be like, so I had this band called Raw Power I used to play. They're from Italy. they were like, but then that got me into like bands that were more tuneful, like the Hoodoo Gurus and Midnight Oil, and so I used to, and luckily the only way, like, we were too poor to get to buy records, so we just go to the library. We had a cool library that sometimes would pick up they just tried to pick up everything, so you could rent, you'd take these, not rent them, but you'd take them out of the library thing and sit there with your tape recorder and try and tape record all this stuff, like, and then CDs came around and we're like, oh my god, CDs, and everybody had their, we literally worshiped the box of one CD player, and then we started buying CDs. And so, I didn't have a huge collection because they were so expensive, but I mean, the couple albums I bought, like the ones I loved, the two albums I just ran out and got immediately. One of them was, well, there's three actually that changed my life. There's Split Ends, 6 Months in a Leaky Boat. I love that song, and it's fantastic. But that got me into the Finn Brothers, which is they were deep Beatles fans. So of course I was going to love that. And then the other one was You Better You Bet, when Kenny Jones took over as a drummer of the Who. What else? And I thought, and that brought the Who back for me, because it was like, this is a band I listened to on the records, and I thought I didn't really have a connection to, but then I did have a connection because they were on the radio. So I bought that album. I was on my bike, my pedal bike, and this car went by, this red car. I think it was a Trans Am, and had the windows open. That song was blaring in the car, and I turned around and I followed that car as long as I could so I could hear that song. And then I went straight and bought the album. But then what else was the other one I loved? So, and then also Silent Running. I remember I took my brother to work, because I go, at 14 you can get your learner's license, but you can't drive a car, but you can drive somebody who can drive a car. My brother was 16, so he could drive. So I drove him to his work, and Silent Running was on. I was like, I love that song. So I went next door to a record store, and I picked up, I think they had a 45 of it or something like that, I can't remember what I picked up, but I remember getting it because I loved it. And I didn't know that was Mike and the Mechanics. Like, I just went, and then that was my that was the Mechanics that I fell in love with, was that stuff. And then, of course they got big, but they were always like a band that didn't really want to promote themselves. They were like, yeah, they were kind of like the band everybody knew but didn't know.
Well, I mean, look, when back then, and we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, right?
I know.
Now, but there you go. So let's do it. So for those of you who don't know, Tim is one of the two lead vocalists in Mike and the Mechanics now. Although if the boss ends up watching this, he didn't mention that in his sister's record collection, any Genesis records. I
bet you there were. I bet you anything. I'm sure Small Creatures. I'm sure there was like a fourth. I'm sure there had to be. But because there was like 300, almost 300, 400 albums. I got so deep, and I was like, these are heavy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these are heavy albums. So, and I wish I had that collection when I left Canada. I mean, my pattern is this: when I go to a country, I go full. Like, so, I mean, when I left to America, I basically just said to all my friends, just keep my stuff, whatever you want to keep. And most of them took my stuff, like power tools or bikes or whatever. And then I moved to America. And then when I moved back to Toronto for like 6 months, I was kind of half living in New York. So I had my visa. It didn't expire for another year and a half. And then I was kind of doing shows there, trying to get stuff back in New York. And then I got a gig in London. So when I went to London, I thought, well, I'll only do 9 months. So I'll take the bare minimum. I had a friend of mine renting my place, Patricia Santilli, and so she rented my place, and then she basically inherited all my shit.
So basically what we can expect is eventually there'll be an episode of Storage Wars that they'll open it up and it'll be the Howar collection.
I don't know. I had friends of mine calling me, should I get rid of this stuff? And I was like, dude, you held on to it for that long. Get rid of it. Like, charities, and some of the stuff was really dear to me. Like, but how dear? Like, I'd rather have the story of going someplace, doing something, than holding on to things. Because I don't know anybody who dies going, but my things, they always go, I love these people. Make sure they,
Most coffins don't come with storage space. There's probably a reason why.
Right? So exactly, right? There's no, we're still digging up people who were stupid enough to make storage space for their coffins,
So let's get back to that, and we'll go down the Mechanics line for a little bit. I definitely want to hit on some other things you're working on, but you get back to what you said. You didn't know who was singing for the Mechanics, and I think going to what you said, they are one of those bands where you know the music, you don't necessarily know the band, but it sounds so familiar.
I know,
and it's so accessible that you embrace it easily. right? I mean, at that point, you had Paul Carrick, who Ace and Squeeze and had sang with Nick Lowe and you name it, right? And here comes this song, and you never know who he's really singing with, if it's him or a band.
There's another guy I love, Nick Lowe. Jesus, like God, what like tunes, man, Anyway, so we're going on.
So Carrick's in the band, and he's been in so many things that you don't know that it's a new band or it's not his solo stuff. Yeah. And then it took off like a bolt of lightning. I mean, it really did. And all these years later, you guys are still going. And just, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, what was the big announcement?
We're doing a weeks tour, 2025. We got UK and Germany coming up. So
UK and Germany.
That's really good. And fingers crossed we'll get back to America. I just think it's about finding the right promoter. The thing is that we're not young guys anymore. So, and I think Mike, not that he deserves it, but he deserves to tour nicely, And he's a class act. Mike is not. Mike would be very happy being in the bus with all the rest of us. He is. He's not one of these fussy rock star guys. He's like, my limo's coming at 12. You guys will go on the bus. He doesn't do that stuff. He goes with everybody else. When we're on a tour, he'll schlep his own luggage, and he's fantastic. And I think that's a great way to lead the band because, we just get on with it. And we have a really fun time touring. So I think that's the nucleus of all of our stuff is we actually like making music together. And I think it's, I think that was maybe at the beginning, always the reason why Mike wanted to go out and do stuff is that he loved creating. And, to create with people who like creating with him is the vibe. So yeah, and we all really get along. So
yeah. Now, are there any plans prior to hitting the road for either new material or any repackaging, anything to kind of help promote?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. It's all up to Mike. I mean, we were going to try and get another album together, but I think that was supposed to happen in February. But, time goes on. Mike went to Antarctica. He's got some family to see, and his son just got engaged, and, his other son's married, and he's got his daughter's kids who he loves and adores. And so, there's life, and I think also because of life, you get the songs, right? If you don't do life, you kind of dry up in the studio where you're like, what am I doing here? And and I think that's what happened to a lot of artists where they've dried up and went, I have to get back to my life. And they get their life back together and they enjoy it so much that 10 years goes by and then they go, I think I might do an album, but they actually have the life to draw on so they can make the album. So, that, and fingers crossed, they'll have something that's, people like. But I think Mike's one of those guys. He's hyper creative. And when he does get in the studio, things happen. So, I don't want to say watch this space because, but you just never know. He's not done. I don't think any of us are done because we just enjoy hanging out. And I think we enjoy the dynamic on stage. Almost that's more important than what happens off stage because I think what happens on stage is quite exciting because there's two lead singers and we can trade off and do BVs for each other and take a bit of the weight and you can do, fun things with the music. And we're not going outside the box. We're not really trying to recreate the wheel when we sing the songs. We're trying to pay tribute to them for the fans who've been there before, but also to keep them alive, like they're live songs. So they have to have an energy to them. And I think that energy is infectious. And I think that's what keeps us on tour for so many years and why we're going out next year.
That's great. Now, I mean, we're early. I'll tell you two things. Number one, my phone blew up and people are like, where are they playing in America? So if you guys can find another band to tour with or the right promoter, people here really do want to hear.
We were thinking about it. We were trying to get something together with a couple other bands, and bigger bands, too. And it's just about that right mix, I think, you get the right cats together, it would be a really fun tour, especially something where we could all trade the headline spot, so it's hard to find bands that you could do that with because some people are obviously hitting at a big level and they got to make all that money, but then some people are comfortable enough to tour their new stuff and their greatest hit stuff, and those are the kind of bands I think we want to be with. But if it's meant to be, it'll happen, and I would love it to happen because for one thing, I fell in love with America when I toured it. I did Les Mis there for 2.5 years, well, almost 3 years, and I drove all of America. And, I'd highly recommend if you're American or Canadian or whatever, you get in a car and before they're outlawed and go drive the country because it's worth every second in that car.
It's a great expansive space.
Yeah.
My car has the plus 100,000 miles to prove it.
Dude, why not?
I mean, what you're talking about, I mean, Squeeze and the Psychedelic Furs did that last year, where every night they just swapped. One started, one finished off the show. So if you can find someone like that, that'd be great.
Well, that's the vibe. I mean, and also that's it. Just I think guys are out there doing their stuff and who love doing it for the same reasons. And I mean, who knows? If it's meant to be, it'll happen. So things come by the office all the time, and I think Tony's great with kind of knowing what's good and what's not. I mean, there's a reason why he's Tony Smith Management, or why he's Hit and Run, because he's good at managing. He's really good at making things good for his artists, and really good at making stuff that's worth doing and worth and worth touring our stuff there. So. That's fingers crossed it'll happen. I would really like it to happen.
Fingers crossed for everybody over here who would love to see you.
Yeah, I mean, I miss America. I really do. I love it. I love the portions of food sizes, and I think the people are amazing. All governments are crazy. Like, come on, if you want to look into it, they're all crazy. So don't judge a country solely on its government. Judge it on its people, and the people in America are amazing. So,
yeah, well. Hopefully you guys will dig deep into the repertoire. I mean, there's so many albums to choose from, so many songs.
There's a lot. Like you said, that familiarity of stuff. Whenever you listen to Par Avion, or Take It In or whatever, I'm like, geez, those songs, they just were a background song. And you're like, oh, I love that song. Who sings it? And they go, I don't know, I just love it. And they never really delve into who sings it, because they could have been, at the time, maybe a number of artists maybe could have sung that, but it was Mike and the Mechanics. So.
Well, and I will say, for not that I have any say in what's going to happen, but I think one of the first times you and I ever talked, we were talking about Taking In, and you guys sang it in Chicago, and dude, you just owned it. Like, you made it yours, man. And it's really something that
I grew up in that era, so I kind of know that style of singing, and I think you can't. And I think Mike's really particular too. He wouldn't have it if I didn't suit the song. He wouldn't say he'd sing it, So it worked out all right, And I was really happy to be able to sing like that tune. Or, I mean, it's a great gig. It's a really great gig, and it's only through being, in some ways, the right place at the right time, or just fluke, that I met Mike.